She never imagined that grief could make you invisible. When her husband died, it wasn't dramatic. There were no hospital alarms, no rushed goodbyes. He passed quietly in his sleep, the same way he had lived, without noise, without asking for attention. 53 years of marriage ended in a single morning where the house felt suddenly too big, too quiet, and too empty. For weeks, she moved through her days like a shadow, cooking for two out of habit, setting his cup beside hers before realizing no one would touch it, sitting on the edge of the bed at night, holding his old cardigan, breathing in what little warmth remained. Her son, Imran, came more often during those weeks. At first, it comforted her. He would sit at the table, scroll on his phone, nod absently while she talked. He didn't cry much. He said he had to stay strong for his wife, Nadia, and the kids. It was Nadia who suggested the move. Ami shouldn't be alone right now, she said one evening, her voice soft but rehearsed. She can stay with us for a while, just until she feels better. Just for a while. The grandmother packed lightly, a few clothes, her husband's framed photograph, some documents she kept in a brown envelope she never let out of her sight. She locked her house carefully before leaving, as if she were only stepping out for groceries. She didn't know that was the last time she would touch that door as the woman everyone respected. At first, things were polite. Nadia called her Ami in front of guests. She offered tea. She smiled, though the smile never reached her eyes. The grandmother stayed quiet. She woke early, folded her blankets neatly, and tried not to be in anyone's way. She cooked because it calmed her. She cleaned because she didn't know how else to show gratitude. She watched the grandchildren after school so Nadia could rest. No one asked her to do these things, but no one stopped her either. Slowly, the tone changed. Ami, you don't need to sit in the living room all day, Nadia said once, lowering the volume on the TV. The kids need space. Another day, why did you make lentils again? Imran doesn't like them. Another, you use too much detergent, it's expensive. The grandmother apologized every time, even when she didn't understand what she had done wrong. Her room was the smallest one, no lock, no fan at first. When she asked gently, Nadia sighed loudly and said, "So many demands." Meals changed. Plates got smaller. She was told to eat later after everyone else. When guests came, she was asked to stay in her room because they get uncomfortable seeing elders around. The words hurt, but what hurt more was Imran's silence. He never defended her. He never corrected Nadia. Sometimes he avoided eye contact altogether. Months passed. Then the comments became sharper. You're always tired. You forget things. You move too slowly. One evening, she overheard Nadia talking on the phone. She's basically useless now, Nadia said, not knowing the grandmother was standing just outside the kitchen. Just sits there like furniture. The grandmother went back to her room without making a sound. She cried quietly that night, pressing her face into her pillow so no one would hear. A week later, Nadia brought it up casually at dinner. I think we need to talk about next steps, Nadia said, stirring her rice. Ami can't manage anymore. She needs professional care. The word hit like a slap. Burden. Imran cleared his throat. Nadia's right, Ami. It's getting difficult. The grandmother looked at her son, searching his face for the boy she had once stayed awake for during fevers, the man whose university fees she had paid by selling her jewelry. I don't cause trouble, she said softly. I can manage. Nadia laughed lightly. You don't even realize how much trouble you cause. The decision, Nadia said, was already made. The papers would be prepared soon. They spoke as if she weren't sitting there, as if she were already gone. That night, the grandmother didn't cry. She opened her brown envelope instead. Inside were documents she had reviewed many times over the years, always after her husband insisted. Never put anything in anyone's name but your own, he had told her. Not because you don't love them, but because love changes. Years ago, long before Imran married, long before Nadia entered their lives, they had created a trust. Nadia's smile froze in a way that looked almost painful. She read the first page again, then the second, then the third. Her fingers began to shake, though she tried to hide it by pressing the papers against the table. This can't be real, she said, her voice suddenly too loud. Imran, say something. Imran was staring at the lawyer, his mouth slightly open, as if someone had knocked the air out of his chest. Ami, he finally said, turning toward his mother, what is this? The grandmother didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse. She didn't gloat. She simply said, these are the papers your father and I prepared years ago. Nadia laughed again, but this time it cracked halfway through. You're lying. She doesn't even understand paperwork. She forgets things. She can't. I forget where I put my glasses, the grandmother said softly. Not my name, not my rights. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Nadia, you and your husband have 30 days to vacate the property. The vehicles registered under the trust are to be returned within 48 hours. The business accounts will be frozen until new management is installed. Nadia's knees buckled. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. You can't do this, she whispered, now looking directly at the grandmother. Where will we go? What about the children? The grandmother tilted her head slightly. You were very concerned about where I would go. I assumed you had plans for yourself as well. Imran's face flushed red. Ami, please, why didn't you tell us? She looked at him then, really looked at him. I didn't think I needed to, she said. You were my son. That sentence hurt more than any insult could have. For the first time, Imran broke down. I never meant for things to go this far, he said, rubbing his face. Nadia she said you were unhappy, that you needed care. The grandmother nodded slowly. Yes, you believed her. Silence filled the room. That night, Nadia didn't sleep. She paced the house like an animal trapped in a cage. She made phone calls to her parents, her siblings, her friends. No one offered help. Some avoided her calls altogether. Others said things like, you should have been careful, or why did you push an old woman like that? By morning, panic had fully replaced arrogance. She knocked on the grandmother's door. For years, she had never knocked. Ami, she said, forcing tears into her voice, we need to talk. The grandmother opened the door slowly. Yes? Nadia fell to her knees. I was wrong. I was stressed. I didn't mean what I said. Please don't do this to us. The grandmother watched her quietly. I didn't send you eviction papers because you were rude. I sent them because you tried to erase me. Nadia reached for her feet. Please, she sobbed. I'll change, I swear. The grandmother stepped back. Change does not begin with desperation. It begins when no one is watching. Imran stood in the hallway, helpless. Days passed. Word spread quickly. In their community, nothing stayed secret long. People whispered at the mosque, neighbors stared, relatives called with sudden concern for the grandmother's health. The business stalled without her signature. Suppliers demanded answers. Employees began to leave. Imran realized too late how little control he had ever truly had. One evening, he sat beside his mother. I failed you, he said quietly. She nodded. Yes, you did. He waited for comfort. It didn't come. Instead, she said, but failure does not have to be permanent. Nadia, however, was unraveling. She blamed everyone. She accused Imran of weakness. She accused the grandmother of manipulation. She planned this, Nadia shouted one night. She pretended to be helpless. The grandmother didn't deny it. I allowed you to underestimate me. That was your choice. With 2 weeks left, Nadia packed angrily, slamming drawers, breaking dishes she claimed were old anyway. On the final day, the grandmother stood in the living room. This house will be quiet again. That's all I ever wanted. Nadia screamed as they left. Imran turned back at the door. Ami? The silence after they left was different from the silence she had known before. This one didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like space. For the first few days, the grandmother moved slowly through the house, touching walls, windows, and door frames as if greeting old friends. She opened cupboards Nadia had kept locked. She rearranged the furniture back the way it used to be. She placed her husband's photograph in the living room again, not hidden on a shelf. At night, she slept deeply for the first time in years. Meanwhile, Nadia was unraveling. They moved into a small rented apartment on the outskirts of the city. The walls were thin, the neighbors loud. The air smelled of cooking oil and damp concrete. Nadia hated it instantly. This is temporary, she kept telling herself. Once people realize she's lying, this will all be reversed. But nothing reversed. Instead, things got worse. Imran's business partners began calling. They weren't kind. Without access to accounts, contracts couldn't be renewed. Vehicles sat idle. Employees demanded salaries that Imran couldn't pay. His name, once spoken with respect, now carried embarrassment. Your mother owns everything, one partner snapped. Why did you treat her like a servant? Imran stopped answering calls. Nadia's parents refused to take them in. You brought this on yourself, her mother said bluntly. We warned you not to disrespect elders. Friends disappeared. Invitations stopped. At school, other parents whispered. Nadia felt eyes on her everywhere. One afternoon, she stormed back to the house unannounced. She rang the bell again and again until the grandmother opened the door. You've humiliated me, Nadia said, tears streaking her face. Everyone knows. The grandmother looked at her calmly. You humiliated yourself the day you decided I was disposable, she replied. Nadia's voice dropped to a whisper. Why didn't you just tell me? She asked. Why let it get this far? The grandmother studied her face for a long moment. Because respect given only under threat isn't respect. She left without another word. Imran, however, returned weeks later. He came alone. He stood at the gate like a child afraid to knock. When she opened it, he couldn't meet her eyes. I lost everything, he said quietly. The grandmother nodded. I know. I don't blame you, he added quickly. I blame myself. She said nothing. I chose comfort over conscience. I thought staying quiet was easier. She finally spoke. Silence is never neutral. It always sides with the louder voice. Imran swallowed hard. I want to rebuild, not the business, not the money, us. She looked at him then, really looked. I am not angry anymore, she said. But forgiveness does not mean restoration. He nodded, tears forming. I understand. From that day on, he came once a week. He helped with groceries. He fixed things around the house. He listened more than he spoke. Nadia never came with him. She couldn't. Watching him kneel to repair a leaking tap, listening to his mother talk calmly about her plans, was unbearable to her. Eventually, she asked for separation. She told people Imran had changed. In truth, he finally had. Months passed, the grandmother's life filled with quiet routines. She joined a community group for widows. She volunteered twice a week at a legal clinic, helping elderly women understand their rights. She became known, not loudly but steadily, as someone you should never underestimate. One afternoon, a young woman approached her after a session. My in-laws say I own nothing, the woman whispered. They say I should be grateful. The grandmother held her hand. Gratitude should never cost you dignity. News reached her one day that Nadia had taken a job she considered beneath her. She felt no satisfaction, only distance. Imran eventually moved into a small apartment closer to his workplace. He rebuilt his career slowly, honestly, without shortcuts. On the anniversary of her husband's death, the grandmother visited his grave. She sat beside it quietly. "You were right," she said softly. "People change, but preparation doesn't." She placed flowers and stood up, her back straight. That evening, she hosted dinner. Nothing grand, just a few friends, laughter, warm food. As the tea steamed in delicate cups, one of the women asked her gently, "Do you miss having a big family around?" The grandmother smiled. "I don't miss being needed. I miss being respected." And that was the lesson she left behind. Not spoken loudly, not carved in stone, but lived. The house was quiet again. Not empty, not lonely, just quiet. The grandmother moved through her rooms, touching familiar walls, feeling the weight of years and memories settle around her. She lit a candle by the window each evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, knowing she had lived long enough to see justice not shouted, but quietly served. She tended her garden, each flower a small act of defiance, a reminder that life continues even after betrayal. She laughed again, soft, gentle, unhurried, without fear that someone would belittle it. Imran visited on weekends, helping where he could, not as a son who owed, but as a man who had learned humility, responsibility, and respect. He never forgot the lesson she had quietly enforced, that love without honor is meaningless and respect is never to be taken for granted. Nadia faded from their lives. The world she thought she could control slipped away, leaving only lessons she refused to learn. The grandmother never gossiped. She never celebrated her triumph loudly. She simply lived, calm, dignified, untouchable. In the evenings, she would sit by the window, sip her tea, and smile faintly, knowing she had not only reclaimed her house and her life, but had also reminded the world that no one, no matter how confident, loud, or manipulative, could erase the value of a life lived with foresight, patience, and quiet strength. And for the first time in decades, she was truly, completely free.